Hi there, this is Professor Jurison. I just wanted to make you a quick video and show you how to make a negative sandwich image, and also show you some other techniques of things you could sandwich, such as texture screens. So to start with, what I'm going to do is I would take my my film holder, and I have these on my light table. And one of the things I wanted to point out here when you're sandwiching pictures is that you see I got a lot of negatives out here. I did a workshop a long time ago with Jerry Uhlsman, and one of the things that he talked about was that how much time he spends on the light table looking at negatives. So you want to like put all your negatives out on the light table and start looking at them, because the idea is to try to kind of find pictures that work together. And you can even specifically shoot pictures that you want to put together. So for example, you might shoot a picture of a brick wall and then shoot a picture of your face and then make yourself brickyard or brick wall face. So you put the two together and you could come up with something like that. And it's very similar to the Gonsfield photography I was talking about in the other video. But so what I'm gonna look at these negatives here, and I picked out a negative of myself right here. So I'm gonna pull this out of here. Get this out of the negative sleeve right here. And then I have a picture of some trees back here that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to pull this out of here. And what I will do then is I'm just going to take my negative carrier, and I'll put my negative of the trees in there. And people always ask me which image comes out more distinct, the one on the top or the one on the bottom. And I think it's just kind of playing with it. Sometimes they come out better if you put it on the top. Sometimes they come out better if you put it on the bottom. So, but I'm just going to put this negative here right now on top of the trees, and then you want to make sure you get the negative in correctly underneath the little pins in there. And you could do this with 35 millimeter 4x5. It doesn't matter. And then I would have my negative right there, and then I would be ready to go put that in the enlarger and make a print. And that's as simple as it is for stacking negatives. You could even do like 3, but you know, put another negative on top of this if you want, but that might be kind of confusing. Generally, this type of picture will come out really cool if you you know, just stack 2 like that together. Now, something else you could try is taking other things and stacking them on top of your negatives. Like what I have right here is I just have a piece of cheesecloth. And what I would want to do with this first is actually stretch this out, maybe tape this with some blue tape on top of a piece of mat board, and just put it into the dry mount press, or use your iron at home and iron it so it's really flat and stiff. And then I could just lay that on top of my negative too, and that will create a texture within the print. You could also stretch a piece of this over a glass and lay that on top of your photographic paper when you're making a print. And you could actually just leave that for part of the time. So if you were making a print and you wanted to add like a texture like this, what you could do is stretch this over a piece of glass so that it's nice and flat, and so that it'll lay flat on top of your picture. And say you did your test strip, you're going to have to do a test strip with this too for the amount of time. But if your print was like a 10-second exposure, you might do it for like 8 seconds, and then add instead of just adding the other 2 seconds to make it the right exposure, you might add like another 6 seconds, because this is really going to block a lot of light. But you would basically lay this on top of your photographic paper with the image being printed through it, and it'll add some texture through it. But I never really do it for the full amount of time. You can do it for the full amount of time, but it comes out really heavily textured like that. And you know, I don't really like that. It kind of looks like a canvas print or something. But other things you can use is you can actually make your own texture screens. And I have some here. Let me show you a couple, and I'll tell you how to make these here toward the end of the video. But so here's a texture screen right here. I don't know if you can see the texture in it. Here's another one here. So there's a lot of different textures that you can come up with using texture screens. And you could actually just, again, these were ones I bought, but you can go outside and you know, shoot some gravel and shoot a number of different things and actually produce your own texture screens. Like here's one here. Hopefully you can see these textures in the video, but let's see, there's one there. Okay, so let's look at a couple pictures that were made like this. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about a little bit now was texture screens and how you can actually make some. And I'm going to tell you how to make them the old-fashioned way, the analog way, and then also how to make them the digital way. I pulled back to this photograph from the video so that you could actually see this texture screen right here. The thing I want you to pay attention to in it is like the density. You see, it's not real dark like a film negative, so it's very light. And I'll tell you how you can get that in film and then how these actually ones were created. So why don't we start with the digital, since that's what's up here, and these are actually digital texture screens. And the way you can do that is you could simply go to, you can make these yourself. If you go to like Google and search free texture screens, you could even search like free texture screens for Photoshop and download those files, and then simply print them out on a laser printer. And you might want to adjust the density of them and so forth. And let me see if I can find one from Photoshop right here I can show you. A free texture screen that I downloaded in Photoshop, and I'll show you. I put it over an image, but you could basically take something like this and then go under Image, Adjust Levels, and you could actually lighten it up a lot or darken it up, but make it really light like that, and then actually just go print that on a laser printer, and it'll give you these little bit of textures on the piece of laser printer film. And by doing that, you can actually lay that down on top of your negative if you cut out a piece the size of your negative, or you can lay it on top of the paper. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out, and this is really important now, if you are laying these texture screens like I showed you earlier, the piece of cheesecloth and stuff, and I said stretch it over a piece of glass, like your contact printing frame is what I'm talking about. You don't want to print texture screens on the paper in the easel because they won't come out sharp. So they're just like when you're making a contact sheet with your negatives, you have to press the texture screen tight against your photographic paper when you're making a print through it. So you would basically put this in a contact printing frame and then expose your picture on top of it, like straight through the piece of glass onto the piece of paper, but with this texture screen on the top of it, if you were going to do it that way. But if you just lay it on top of your, if you put it in the easel or something and laid it on top of it, it wouldn't come out super sharp. And also for your negative carrier, another thing you can do is use a glass negative carrier if you wanted, if you weren't getting it sharp enough by laying two negatives on top of each other. By using a glass negative carrier, it has a piece of glass on both sides, and it'll actually, press both negatives together so you can get a really sharp image. So let me click on this, the other part of this picture here. So that was just a picture of a selfie I did with a little plastic camera, and I was drinking a bottle of root beer up on the roof of a friend of mine's. He had a building down in Cincinnati, and I shot this picture, but it came out kind of thin. It was again a simple camera where it doesn't have no controls. You just click it and wind it and click it and wind it. But one of these little panoramic ones, I think they were an Ansco, and they were like $10 when they came out. But I had this negative, and I just thought it looked kind of cool with this texture. So if I click the texture off, there's the picture. But by putting the texture on, it makes it look a little bit cooler. So texture screens are kind of neat. And here's a close-up of the negatives that I showed you in the video earlier, where I took the picture of the background with the trees and so forth, and then I laid a picture of myself over the top of it. And again, I would just put this in the enlarger's negative carrier and make a print. And I simply reversed the negative in Photoshop just to give you an idea what the print would look like. So you can maybe even kind of play with that sometime if you wanted to, see what the prints would look like put together. You could just take a picture of the negatives and then put them in Photoshop and flip them over like that and kind of see what they look like. Now, as far as making texture screens analog way, like with film, you simply go out and photograph a bunch of different things, and then what you're going to do is you're going to develop them only for about maybe a half of the developing time. So if your developing time was like 9 minutes, you would only develop that roll of film for 4.5 minutes. But what you would do is you'd want to develop it with constant agitation. Now again, you don't want to take pictures of things that have a lot of different tone in them, but you're kind of going for like high contrast things like sticks on cement. Using cement helps out a lot, and like or a gravel driveway or something like that. Taking pictures of things like that just to get these little intricate textures. Um, then you develop the film for half of the time, but then what you do is you need to make sure you're constantly agitating, so you're just shaking it. Shake that can good, because that's going to give you so much contrast in the film, and that's what's going to give you the added textures. And because of the underdevelopment that you're going to give it, it's going to be fairly clear when you after you fix it and so forth. And then you can just lay those texture screens over the top of the picture. Um, Another thing, when I was at Ohio State, there was a guy there that printed all his pictures, and they kind of got that scratched effect, like in the rooftop picture, the Photoshop texture screen that I showed you. And what he did was find a piece of clear 120 film. He was shooting 120, found a piece of clear 120 film, and he taped it on the bottom of his shoe. And then he just walked around for a while on it and put all kind of scratches on that piece of film. And then what he did is wipe it really clean with negative carrier to make sure you get all the dust and grit off of it, because if there's any grit on it, that would actually scratch your film when you lay it on top of it. So you want to clean it really good with film alcohol or film cleaner or rubbing alcohol using a Q-tip or cotton swab. And once it's really clean, you'll see all the scratches in that piece of clear film or clear acetate, and you can lay that down over the top of it. So there's a lot of different things you can do. I actually have a lot of negatives where I took a scraping tool, and I actually scraped some of the emulsion side off, and I did little drawings into the emulsion of the film. Well, once you do that, the negatives permanently changed, so you can't go back. But I would shoot several shots of the pictures I was going to do, and then go back and mark into the negative. And if you do it on the emulsion side, you actually can scratch the emulsion off and create black lines. And if you do it on the base side of the film, or the front side of the film where the emulsion isn't the unemulsion side, if you do it on that, that'll create little white lines. So, and again, a scribe is something you would use. It's like a almost like an awl. You would use a very sharp metal point. You could probably use a sewing needle and just scrape some emulsion off, or scrape into the plastic side of the negative. So anyway, I hope that helps. Kind of cool idea, texture screens. Get out there and experiment and have fun. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. Thank you.